Well, Sir Philip Davies joins me now for the Conservatives from Shipley. Thanks so much for joining us this Saturday evening. We appreciate it. Now, I think it's fair to say you're someone that's known for being pretty straight talking. How can you tell us how you think the Conservative campaign is going?
Well, it's been tough, Ali. I don't think you need to be Sir John Curtis or anybody like that to work that out. It's been a tough few weeks, but it's always good fun being out on the campaign trail, meeting the voters. And look, what I find speaking to voters in my area is that actually there's a lot of people who haven't made their minds up. I think that it's probably fair to say that they're quite disillusioned with politicians generally, with all the main parties. There's certainly no great desire to see Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner running the country, and so there's a lot of votes up for grabs in the last few weeks of the campaign. That's what I find. But yeah, obviously it's been tough going at the start of the campaign. No one's going to deny that.
Why do you think it's been tough? Do you think someone's to blame? Do you think it's Rishi Sunak's fault?
No, I don't think it's Rishi Sunak's fault at all. No, I mean, I think there's been some unfortunate incidents. I think some of the criticism he's had has been over the top and unfair, to be perfectly honest. I think the media have had this idea that they sort of had a collective game that they're trying to play. See, let's see how low we can get the Conservatives in the polls or whatever it might be. And meanwhile, Keir Starmer, who seems to not know from one day to the next what he's talking about, seems to serenely go on without any real challenge from the media. Well, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, instead of just trying to nitpick on anything that the Prime Minister might or might not do, most of it's sort of trivial stuff. Let's just focus on what Keir Starmer's going to do. Which taxes is he going to increase? Why is it yesterday he couldn't rule out charging capital gains tax on people's prime residences, and Angela Rayner couldn't rule that out 2 days later? When you start doing your job properly in the media and start actually challenging Keir Starmer about what he really believes and what he's really going to do, we might see a bit of a change in the polls.
I can assure you we will be challenging the Labour Party later, but this is about the Conservative Party. And we know that one poll yesterday showed Nigel Farage's party ahead of the Conservatives. How worried are you about the threat from the right?
Well, as you say, it was one poll. It was one poll, YouGov, which has consistently had reform much higher than everybody else. In fact, you get to the point where you think that YouGov are a campaigning organisation masquerading as a polling company, to be perfectly honest. So far out are they from other people. That isn't what I find on the doorstep. But yes, look, there are lots of people who agree with what Nigel Farage says. I'm one of those people. I agree with lots of what Nigel Farage says. If you sat me and him down in your studio next to each other, you'd probably find that we wouldn't be disagreeing on many issues. But the fact of the matter is that Nigel, who I'd be bold enough to call a friend, Nigel saying that, he's the leader of the opposition 1 minute, and then the next day it's saying we might win 2 seats, and his deputy leader saying, well, we might even win 4 seats. That shows what the situation really is. It's that voting reform is voting for Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister with a big majority. And so what we've got to do is persuade Conservative voters not to be seduced by this sort of Farage mania, like Clegg mania in 2010 that the media are trying to whip up, and actually show that actually if you vote, Keir Starmer wants you to vote reform.
Some people in your party think he should be embraced by the Conservatives. You say you agree with him on some things. Do you think that's right?
Well, it's crazy that Nigel Farage and me are standing against each other in an election in different parties. It's crackers. And the only person who benefits...
He join your party then, do you think?
Well, I would like to see that. Yeah, I'd like to see Nigel Farage. He's a Conservative. Of course, he's got Conservative views. We agree with each other on many issues. All Nigel Farage is doing at this election, and I'm sure it's doing his ego, which is already the size of a small plant, a lot of good. But all he's doing, aside from massaging that ego, is helping Keir Starmer build as big a majority as possible in Parliament. And we've got to remind voters that, if you don't want socialism on steroids, with your home being taxed and all the rest of it, that you're not really doing a particularly good job at highlighting at the moment what's coming down the line. We've got to remind people that voting for Nigel Farage is not going to do you any good. On the day after the election, I suspect all those people who do vote reform will think, what on earth have we done? If at the end of it, all they find is that Keir Starmer's in Downing Street introducing socialism on steroids. So we've got to win people back over the next few weeks. It's going to be difficult. We've got a mountain to climb, clearly, but it's not impossible. And the Labour Party is such a danger to the country. We've got to keep fighting.
Do you think I think the problem for a lot of people is kind of trust. Do you think this government's being honest enough about its record. You once said that Boris Johnson was the most left-wing Prime Minister since Harold Wilson. I guess, do you stand by that, and do you think he's the source of some of these problems?
Well, obviously, I mean, you just have to look at the immigration figures, which are far too high, which are a result of Boris Johnson's liberal attitude towards immigration. Thankfully, Rishi Sunak, since the start of the year, has radically changed the immigration rules. So those figures are going to come right down as he's basically stopped student dependents coming into the country and increased the amount that people have to earn before they come into the country. So yes, we had the proper socialism of the lockdowns, which I was completely opposed to at the time, which was which obviously the media were agitating for, as well as the opposition. That's why our taxes are so high. That's why our debt's so high, because we spent £400 billion protecting people during a lockdown. So of course, yes, that was far too left wing. Boris was a fanatic for net zero. Rishi Sunak has been pushing back the date when we're going to be banning diesel cars and petrol cars. I'd like him to go further, but that's a step in the right direction. Keir Starmer's going to reverse that delay. So yes, I mean, Boris did introduce a much more left-wing regime. I think over the last 14 years, we've had 3 once-in-a-century issues to deal with: a financial crash aftermath that we had to pick up the pieces from. Remember, there is no money. We had to deal with that. We had the COVID pandemic and a war in Europe, and not many governments have 3 once-in-a-century issues to deal with over the last 14 years. And I don't believe that the Labour Party would have dealt with them any better, frankly. But look, elections are about the future, not about the past. It's a referendum on the future, as Bill Clinton rightly said. And we've got to point out that actually people will be a lot better off with a Conservative government than they will be with the disaster of Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner introducing their socialist manifesto.
Sir Philip Davies, thanks so much for your time. We always do get some straight answers from you, so thank you for that.
Thank you.